Let's make sure the necklace doesn't hang on the mic this time. What's up, guys? Halo Repository back today with another video. Today we're going to be talking about Halo Meridian Divide, the next book in the Battleborn series. So let's just jump right into it. Okay, so this intro is going to be a little bit shorter than most of my other videos, simply because I really talked a lot about the details of this and Battleborn's like backstory, author, and all that in my previous video, which if you haven't seen already, definitely go watch that first, because that is the first part of this book series. What you realistically need to know is that this book released the same year as Battleborn, just a couple months later in October of 2019. Still written by Cassandra Rose Clarke, a really famous YA author. Pretty much everything else is the same, like the illustrating and the cover design artists. Now, once again, this and Battleborn were part of a 3-book series. Now, unfortunately, I did talk to Alex Wakeford from HaloStudios, and he pretty much pointed me in the direction of Cassandra Rose Clarke's official website, where she pretty much talks about how the publisher at the time, Scholastic, had to cancel the 3rd book. I don't remember if she gave really any reason for it. I think basically what I would assume is that, again, these books just did not do as well as they had hoped for, so they decided to cancel them. So that's really unfortunate, because the way this book ends really sets up a good premise for the 3rd book. Maybe one day we can get it. I don't know. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this video. For now, though, let's take a look at this cover. Now, very similar to Battleborn, I like this cover. I especially like that the 2019 version, the 1st edition, has the full cover with the glossy look. It's pretty similar in how it looks compared to Halo Battleborn. Basically what you have is, on the front, you have our 4 characters, Evie, Saskia, Victor, and Dorian, with Owen, who is now sporting his brand new JFO armor, in the background. You have a destroyed city known as Annecy that is still on Meridian, but pretty pivotal to the story. And of course, at the very bottom, you have some elites, just again showing off the Covenant that they will be fighting. Very similar to when they re-released it, they got rid of the gloss and they started adding in like the borders and the frames and minimizing pretty much the cover art. The back of the book got more boring, less colorful. I just overall think that these re-releases just kind of took away what made the initial release like just so pretty, in my opinion. Just the way it looks, it's not as eye-catching as that original version, but again, I understand why they did, especially since the publisher did change for the re-release. So again, just saying, gallery books, release the 3rd book. I do think of these 2 covers, Battleborn and Meridian Divide, Battleborn still has my favorite cover. I don't know what it is. I just really like the way Owen and like the overall colors of that cover look. I just think that it's more appeasing, and again, it's hard to explain for me personally. I just think that cover in its own right has just a better look. This is still really good. This is a great successor to that book. But I do think Battleborn's my favorite. I do wish we could have seen what the 3rd one would have looked like. I feel like at some point they should have had at least a concept of the 3rd book's cover, especially with how quickly they were releasing these books. My assumption would be is that Battleborn Part 3 is what we'll call it for now, would have released maybe another 8-ish months after Meridian Divide. So I'm doing fast math off the top of my head, probably like April or May of 2020. Oh God, 2020. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into the actual story of this book, which in fact is actually much shorter than the 1st book by about 40-ish pages, by about 4 chapters. So there's that. So we catch up with our young teens, who I believe at this point are adults, mostly because they are now technically part of the UNSC, as they are doing some of their more expedited training on Tuomi base. Now, it's never really said which planet this is on. They're still within the same range of Meridian. They're just, of course, not on Meridian. I don't think it ever really says in this book what planet this base is currently on, but it does say that they're orbiting Hestia 5, which is the gas giant that Meridian orbits. But yes, they are on this little planet in this base, doing some quick training exercises like capture the flag and all that kind of stuff to really just fine-tune their skills as a unit. We do learn from basically Evie's perspective that pretty much everyone's family, Evie, Dorian, and Victor, all have been taken to a different planet, a different outer colony where they basically are refugees, but they're set up nicely. They have apartments, they have jobs and all this kind of stuff. And basically the idea is for these kids to help Oni / UNSC / the Meridian Militia for whatever their next mission is. And I think most of them have kind of like this idea of once this next mission is over, we're going to go back, not go back home, but go to our families and pretty much just be normal, young adults. During this time, it's very normal for what military training is. They attend classes, they do, cleanings for different parts of the bases. We have one where Dorian and Evie, who have kind of grown closer. I don't want to say there's a romantic connection, but at times you can kind of feel it. But they've definitely come to the point where they're the closest bond of the group, which is funny because technically Evie and Victor were that. But I can tell that that has kind of shifted a little bit to being more Evie and Dorian. While they're cleaning one of the bases, one of the officers comes in and pretty much tells them that, like, hey, you and the rest of the group are being summoned, come with me. Now, in this meeting, they pretty much meet with Captain Delator, which was the Oni captain that we had met briefly at the end of Halo Battleborn. She pretty much updates them that, hey, like, whatever that, the Covenant are searching for in Bruma Samar, they're getting close to finding it. And so it's pretty much time to send you back there to prevent them from capturing whatever it is they're looking for. And we definitely do know it's Forerunner, which again, to this point, if you saw my last video, I have a part from Halo 5 Guardians where Olympia Vale pretty much says that there's been no recorded like Forerunner artifacts or any Forerunner presence on Meridian.
That's what I'm asking. Haven't you been listening?
Granted, yes, this could have just meant that like Oni kept it a secret, but I feel like when you're sending in Spartan Locke, all that kind of stuff to hunt the Master Chief, to find out what these Forerunner Guardians are, that's something you would tell him. So either they didn't tell them, or we just have a really weird inconsistency here. I don't know. But basically, these kids are going to be sent down to Meridian, be joined up with a Meridian militia who's already on the planet, already in the city, or at least within the boundaries of Bruma Samar, meet up with them and basically start their next mission. And it starts off already with a bang. We kind of switch over back to Dorian's perspective of them heading down to the planet. He's still very much haunted by, the death of his friends in Battleborn. He's still very much adamant about not really being a soldier. He doesn't like taking orders. He doesn't like the UNSC. He specifically doesn't like Oni, but he's still willing to do it because he has his group, his friends here, the people he survived with back on 10 weeks ago. As their shuttle is coming down into atmosphere, they are immediately attacked by the Covenant. And it gets to the point that it's so bad that the flight deck officer pretty much comes in and says, hey, kids, guess what? You're becoming ODSTs today. Get in those drop pods right now. And, everyone in this room has had training with the ODST drop pods, but at the same time, they're like, that was just training purposes. They were within a controlled environment. Like, we're supposed to get in these now while we're being attacked by the Covenant. Flight deck officer was like, yep, get in. And so they do that. Everyone gets in their drop pods and they drop down. And, it goes as well as it can for being in an ODST drop pod. The kids are terrified, but they've had their training. They know what to do. They drop down and each one of them makes it down to the surface. We're from Dorian's perspective and he drops down into the woods of Bruma Samar. He starts looking for the others. He does come across Saskia, who says that like she also hasn't found Evie or Victor. So they start looking for them. And in fact, they come across Owen, who's in his brand new JFO armor, says that he's already found Victor and Evie and that they're back at base. Owen takes these two basically to their little hideout / camp that they have in these woods. Here they meet Commander Marikal, who is in charge of all these militia members. It's about 75 people, mostly Meridian militia, but there are a few UNSC soldiers, dipped in here and there, and of course Owen himself. And now the teens, who from this point on will be known as local team, because, they're from Bruma Samar. The camp is using some sort of reflective technology, so that way if any sort of aerial reconnaissance from the Covenant comes around, it wouldn't actually be able to see the base. It would just see like a normal part of the woods. So immediately after local team has been brought into the camp and they've kind of got us situated, Commander Maricol and Owen bring everyone together and start talking about what their mission is. They pretty much inform the group that they're here to prevent the Covenant from finding a Forerunner artifact. They'll be utilizing local team as pretty much like the guides. You know, each member, there'll be 4 groups, and each group will have 1 member of local team. So for example, the first group is gonna have Saskia, who's gonna lead them through. More specifically, they're gonna be utilizing the tunnels that were used in Halo Battleborn that led to like the different, you know, shelters and bunkers within Meridian, or Bruma Samara, I should say. They're gonna be utilizing those to pretty much travel around. The Covenant still hasn't really fully utilized them, and what makes these great is a lot of like the major areas that the Covenant are currently at is right on top of these tunnels. So it allows them to pretty much get around and get to those specific points. On the first go about, Saskia leads the group throughout the tunnels. They are attacked by a few grunts and jackals here and there, and they do end up almost getting overrun by jackals and finding an exit. Later, Victor then takes this same group, or no, his own little group, to this specific area to kind of just do more reconnaissance, see why was the Covenant in this specific location. When they get down to the tunnels where Saskia's group was earlier, they start hearing like a weird humming noise, and that's when they discover that the Covenant are once again drilling in this specific area. Victor then asks his commanding officer if he's able to go up top and do some light reconnaissance. He knows the area pretty well, that he can pretty much find a tree and hide and figure out like what is going on. Victor actually does really well. He gets out of this house, jumps out of the window, and makes his way to like this clearing that leads into some trees near where like these the Covenant is drilling within like this garden. And when he gets in these trees and he starts looking down, he sees this weird machine that's, again, you know, lasering down into the ground. He sees grunts, he sees elites, and this time he sees brutes. Brutes were not in the first book, and quite frankly, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, I would be terrified to see a brute. I mean, they're brutes. Like, back at the camp, the militia starts going over the information that these 2 groups have essentially found. Owen then confirms that this new drill is not a locust. It is a scarab. They're utilizing a scarab to drill down in this garden. And while this drilling was going on, earlier during Victor's team, one of the militia members, you know, like they used a quick distraction and allowed one of the team to get as close as possible to the drill site to look down and see what it is the Covenant have found, because what Victor discovered is a lot of them were cheering and celebrating, the Covenant were, which means they found something. And she comes across this weird like meter wide, meter long device. She can't really tell what it is, but it definitely looks alien. So the plan switches from, you know, trying to capture the device to asset denial. There's going to be 2 squadrons known as Green and Blue Squadron. What they're going to do is essentially clear a path. They're going to be kind of, you know, making noise elsewhere so that the Covenant pulls away from the drill site, while local team, which now includes Owen, are going to make their way to the drill site and plant volatile explosives known as skimmers all around the drill site, so that way they can A, destroy any drilling equipment, including the scarab, and B, basically cause the ground to like go down and prevent the Covenant from capturing this Forerunner artifact. And the mission goes relatively well. Of course, while Blue and Green Squadrons are creating the distractions, local team goes in through the tunnels, gets into that house that's just next to the gardens where the drill site is. They come across a few jackals and grunts here and there, but they are able to successfully plant 8 skimmer charges, run back to the house. They don't go into the tunnels because these skimmer charges are relatively like really high explosives. So there's a worry that it might do something to the tunnels. So they pretty much just stay in this house and right in front of like the entrance to this tunnel and set the bombs off. The skimmers do their job. Owen confirms that the scarab is destroyed. The artifact is now buried down in the ground, and they make their way through the tunnels, which are now a little bit unstable, and they have a little bit of a rough time getting from, you know, where they're at back to base in the tunnels. But overall, they make it back safely. A few hours later, you know, now the militia is out kind of doing like guarding. They're expecting some sort of response from the Covenant for attacking their site. Again, the Covenant doesn't know where they're at, but now that they know that there's a big team in the area that is going to be a problem, they're probably going to be out reconnaissing and trying to find them. During this time, Saskia is still dealing with the problems of her parents. She knows her parents work for, Charybdis Defense Solutions, but at the same time, they would have people over a lot where they would show off some of these weapons. And so there's this this assumption that not only were her parents, doing this, but a lot of what they would do was illegal. They were illegal as arms dealer. And it's just something Saskia continuously stresses over, whether she should tell someone. But at the other end, they're still her parents, and they still haven't reached out. She still has no idea where her parents are. So she goes out to try and find Evie and Victor and talk with them, but instead she finds Owen. And again, she really wants to confess to Owen, mostly because from the first book, when Owen really talks about his backstory, he's an old war orphan from Jericho 7. He was taken in by Oni. He became a Spartan 3. He found a family in the Spartans, and that's very integral for this story, and you'll see why as we get closer to the end. But Saskia still doesn't know. She doesn't really want to tattle on her parents, so she still keeps it to herself. So she ends up going back to her little bunk area and goes to sleep. And on that night, she dreams about her parents, but in a weird dream, kind of like her parents saying she's going to be part of a family now, and then her dad pulls out a needle. I think it's more of a reminiscent dream of kind of what Owen said is becoming part of the family, and then now also, being fearful of becoming a Spartan. It's just one of those things that, you hear one thing throughout your day, and then you just dream about it randomly that night. It's kind of that situation for her. Ultimately, though, she is awoken by the sound of a blaring alarm, and it's pretty much confirmed that the Covenant have found them. Of course, everyone in the camp is now panicking and running around. Local team is trying to stay together, but there's just a lot of, stuff going on. Banshees are bombarding the place. And so immediately this whole militia starts just running away from the camp. But it's not just frantically running away. It's, they're running to their next rendezvous point. The militia all, runs away and gets to their second rendezvous point, basically their second little base that they have going on. It's much smaller. In this moment, everyone is terrified, angry, hurt because of the attack. We do find out that 13 people are missing, with 3 of that 13 confirmed dead. But then here's the unfortunate part. After this attack, Owen learns that Oni wants the artifact. So they're basically telling them, hey, sorry to hear you got attacked, but get back in there, buddy. We need that. And on top of that, Oni confirms hey, don't worry though. We'll get you out. You have 3 days to get the device. And on the 3rd day, the Lord said, but no, seriously, on the 3rd day is when Oni would extract them. So now they kind of have to figure out how to get back over to that garden, find a way to extract that piece of foreign artifact that is now somewhat buried, and also do all that within 3 days, so that way they can be extracted off planet. Now, unfortunately for the militia, their whole plan is to basically kind of charge in there and take the artifact by force. This means that Owen says local team will not be part of this mission because they're not full soldiers. Which throughout this story is kind of an annoyance to Victor, because for these kids, they've trained now for 10 weeks. 3 months ago, they were in this very city surviving with nothing but Saskia's house, their own each unique skills, and Owen. And now they're being told, hey, thanks for doing all that. Thanks for doing all that training. You're still not in the military, so stay here, play with your dolls, and be safe. And this annoys a lot of the kids, mostly Victor, but it's just an annoyance of why did I go through all this training if my skills aren't going to be utilized? So when the militia and all that are starting to get prepared to leave, Dorian's sitting there, and Dorian's not dumb. He knows Oni can't be fully trusted, and so he comes to the conclusion that there's no actual guarantee that they will be extracted from this planet if this artifact is not obtained by the militia. So he devises a backup plan. He knows that there's a tunnel that runs right underneath the garden where the artifact was, blown up with the scarab. So he calls Evie to try and hack into Salome once again. And Salome pretty much shows off camera footage of the area near where the garden is. Both Evie and Dorian find, a relatively good camera angle that shows that in one of these tunnels where it's kind of collapsed mostly, that artifact is now in the tunnel, which means local team who knows these tunnels like the back of their hand have a straight shot of getting to that artifact without running into the Covenant. Dorian and Evie then bring this news to Owen, basically saying like, hey, we have a really good plan to try and get this device. Owen's reluctant. He doesn't want to send these kids into battle. And the other problem is the device that they use to extract foreigner artifacts, because remember, this is a time where we don't really know much about foreigners. Realistically, we shouldn't know this much about foreigners unless you're on Onyx. But there's a worry that like whatever this device is, it could be radioactive, it could have some weird pathogen, something that is a danger to humans. And they only have one like unit that can extract it safely. And that unit is going to go with Owen and the militia when they do like their full-on raid, which means that if the kids were to go down there, they would have no way of extracting the artifact. However, Owen does realize that it is a good backup plan. And if in fact that the militia cannot attack or get to the artifact through their attack, they can then reroute that person that has to extract the artifact to the tunnels, meet up with the kids, and get it then. So overall, Owen says, fine, we do it, but under no circumstances are you to, extract that artifact yourself. The kids make it down to the tunnels pretty easily. The problem is it's really dark in here because the power was, pretty much shut down when they blew up the garden with the skimmers. And so they only have like one little holographic light that they can share, and it's not well. And these tunnels are severely unstable now due to the earlier explosion. So as the kids are making their way closer and closer to the garden, these tunnels get even more unstable, mostly because of the fighting that's going on up above with the militia and Owen. And so the kids get as close as possible, and they do in fact find the artifact. And for a brief moment, they're kind of like, all right, let's settle down now. We have to see what Owen wants. But then Owen radios in and says like, things have gone to shit. The Covenant is much stronger than we expected. Like there's no way we can get down there. You have to get out of there. But Victor pretty much says like, guys, it's right there. We can do this. And so the kids pretty much disobey direct orders, and they themselves extract this foreigner artifact. And it's not big. It's a decent sized little cylinder, but it's something you can carry very easily. And they grab the device. They make their way out of the tunnels before they can collapse, and they head back to base. As they are heading back to base, the group is, switching off who would hold the device, because it's kind of like maybe the less exposure to it, the better, so all of us will share it. But for me, that feels like you're just making sure the entire group dies. Like, when something looks shady, but as long as your homies are going to do it, like you might as well, give it a shot. But when they get back to base, they are struck by what they see. There's very little to anyone back there. And Owen confirms that 70% of the militia were killed in action. And so now it's very grim in this little base. And on top of that, Owen is not happy when he sees the team holding the cylinder. The moment he sees that they have the foreign artifact, he tells them to immediately drop it, and he brings them into their camp. Of course, he, yells at them for disobeying orders, but at the same time, he can't be too mad because his plan didn't work, but at the very least they have gotten it. Owen confirms to the group that extraction's not coming. The foreigner force in atmosphere fighting the UNSC and Meridian militia, or Air Force, is a lot stronger than they are anticipating. Things are getting worse for Meridian by the day, and therefore extraction's almost virtually impossible. And this pisses Dorian off, because the whole reason he made this other plan for them to go in the tunnels and extract the artifact was simply because he wanted that guarantee off-planet extraction. But now he's not getting it, even though him and his team risked their lives to get it. While this is going on, Evie now has these safety gloves to pretty much play with the cylinder. And as she's manipulating some of its structure, it starts to glow on the inside, and she perceives it like this is a puzzle. I have to try and find the right, sequence to get whatever this light is to activate and do something. Owen at first doesn't want her to do it because he's like, you need to leave it to Oni. You need to leave it to the experts. But she says, you just said there's no guarantee off this planet. We might as well figure out what this is, in the event that we cannot leave Meridian. So Owen reluctantly allows her to continue to mess with it. And as she's doing it, it does light up. And it projects a hologram of Meridian but it puts a beacon on a specific point in the northernmost continent of Meridian into the city of Annecy. About an hour later, Evie herself is called into a meeting. And in this meeting, we have Commander Miracle, Owen, and then a holographic, FaceTime of Captain Delator from Oni. Evie is pretty much admonished for toying with the Oni artifact. She's like, you're not supposed to be doing this. You could have died. It could have blown up. We don't know what this is. It was very dangerous. But at the same time, knowing that Evie has some sort of now experience messing with foreign artifacts, that can be better used in the future. Delator does confirm that, extraction from the planet is practically impossible. However, there is a new plan. This plan then gets brought up to everyone that's remaining in this militia force. Commander Miracle gets up and says, hey, extraction is impossible, but don't worry, we're leaving Brumes and we're taking a freighter to the lovely city of Annecy. And everyone's mad because now they're being told that there's yet another Forerunner artifact that they must go and try and find him in Annecy. So of course everyone's mad. No one wants to do this. They're like, we have no supplies. We've lost 70% of our force. Like, what are they expecting us to do? And Commander Miracle pretty much just says like, hey, you know what you were signing on for. Like, quit crying. Everyone get ready. Let's get out of here. The plan here for the moment is to march through like the woods and get to a specific city or smaller town that has this freighter that has a pilot that can take them to Annecy. And while they're on their way, they are attacked by the Covenant. More specifically, they are attacked by 4 elites and 5 brutes. Owen, realizing that this is not a winning battle, basically acts as kind of a distraction. He starts taking on the elites and the brutes and tells everyone to run. So everyone does. As the kids are trying to run away, Commander Miracle's right there with them, trying to keep them going because many of them want to stay back and help Owen. But they're like, or Commander Miracle's like, your kids. He is a Spartan. He's going to be fine. And as he's doing this, a brute comes out of nowhere with like a bladed, I don't know if it's the gravity hammer or like a brute shot, but he comes out with like this bladed weapon and just immediately eviscerates Commander Miracle. The teens obviously panic and run and make their way to this airfield. Mostly everyone makes it to the freighter where the pilot is getting it ready. They're all still being chased by the elites. Owen's like hoofing it now because he gave, as much time as possible for everyone to make it. Fortunately, everyone but Commander Miracle makes it to this freighter and are able to escape. We do learn, so what happens is they get on this freighter. And on the freighter, everyone gets some rest. Evie's in charge of the artifact because she's already been exposed and she has some experience with it. While everyone's sleeping, I really want to get Owen and Dorian mixed up so much. He's mad because he feels like Oni's just going to keep sending them on wild goose chases until they find all these foreign artifacts and that they don't care for the lives that are currently like being risked for all this. And again, he starts talking with Owen, and Owen tells him like, hey, like, we're fighting for something greater than ourselves. It's this kind of like this, again, the story that, Owen gives to Dorian in Battleborn, but it's still being drilled into his head. Like, you have to start putting like the fate of humanity above yourself, above your friends, above this group, and specifically above Meridian. We're not fighting for this one planet anymore. We're fighting for our entire species' existence. And for a moment that kind of resonates with Dorian because he's still mad at his parents for leaving him to join the UNSC. But it kind of makes him like, okay, yeah, maybe they're sacrificing themselves so that me, Remy, and Uncle Max can live. It kind of resonates, but at the end of the day, he does not trust Oni. As they get to the city of Annecy, Dorian looks out the window to try and see the city lights. We've learned that the city was evacuated a day ago, but he's a little surprised to find that the entire city is completely pitch black. And he's like, why would the city grid be shut down? I mean, Brumes, like that city grid's still working, and it's been 3 months since the attack. If this city was just attacked yesterday and evacuated, where were all the lights? And Owen's kind of like, oh, maybe the AI shut it off, or, who really knows? Landing finally in Annecy. It's cold up here. Like, again, this is like the northernmost part of the planet. And so everyone's cold. They're trying to find shelter. And as they're walking around, Dorian realizes something is wrong. And this is where one of the militia members comes up. This militia member by the name is Velois, can never say these names, confirms to Dorian that Annecy may have been evacuated yesterday, but the city was attacked 6 months ago. And Dorian doesn't want to believe this at first because just 3 months ago is when Brumus Samir was attacked. And if you remember from Battleborn, Owen in that book said that Brumus Samir was the first ground contact for Meridian. It was the first city to get attacked. For the most part, it had only been a few weeks of fighting in atmosphere that was kept secret. But then when Brumus Samir was attacked, that was like the beginning. But now he's finding out that that was a lie. 3 months prior to Battleborn's main story, this city that they are now in, Annecy, was attacked and just evacuated a day ago. Again, he doesn't want to believe this until they come across a building that's pretty much destroyed. And Dorian is he is furious. And he's gonna make it a problem. The next morning, after finding kind of like this building that they could hide in and sleep in, Dorian wakes everyone up and he says, we're gonna go confront Owen. And he tells his friends what he has learned. And they do go and confront Owen, where Owen pretty much he sighs and pretty much says yes, I lied to you. It was my orders to. At the time of Brumus Samir, there was no strategic reasoning for me to tell you that the planet had been attacked prior. This was Oni/UNSC orders. I had to do it. And of course, all the teens are hurt because Owen lied to them. And it's here where even Saskia tries to kind of bring up that they should have been warned. This is definitely Dorian's whole argument, is that they should have been told, because then people could have, responded better. And even Saskia says Owen, you of all people should know what happens when people, get that warning. And Owen goes, yeah, I've seen what happens when Covenant attacks and people are warned. They start panicking and they start flying off to flying out of the planet, basically becoming human target practice for the Covenant. And so Owen justifies his answer, but Dorian's pissed. Evie's hurt. Victor's he's aggravated by it, but he understands it. And Saskia is a little bit in that same boat as Victor. Again, you kind of have these two little groups forming in this 4-person group. You have Evie and Dorian, who have grown closer, and you have Victor and Saskia, who, while Victor had a crush on Saskia in the first book, it's a little less talked about in this one, but you can tell that they have similar ideology. It sucks, but we understand it. Owen then says hey, I know this sucks, but we still have a mission to complete. We're gonna go out to the city today and go to where those coordinates from the first artifact shown us. So get prepared. But Dorian's no, I'm done. I don't want to help you. I don't trust you. I don't trust Oni. I'm going to stay here and help the militia members. And he does. So then they head off onto their next mission, where Saskia finds a warthog. And together, Saskia, Victor, and Evie and Owen go out to basically find wherever these coordinates lead to. As they approach the coordinates, they find this courtyard type area where there's this weird foam laying everywhere. They don't really know what it is, and it's not really explored until later, but they start looking around trying to find the coordinates, and they come across a ginormous, well, maybe not ginormous, but a hole in the ground. And the way they found this is, as they were approaching it, the first artifact that they had was responding very weird and kind of starting to pull a little bit, as if it wanted to get to this hole. And as they're making their way closer and closer to this hole, they find that it's actually being protected by a barrier that the Covenant has placed here. So the Covenant has definitely been here. They have definitely found what's ever down here, but they haven't accessed it. Victor sees how much this first artifact is reacting, and he's hey, maybe if you let it go, it could break the force field and we can get down there. But just as he says that, they start getting attacked by the Covenant. Basically, when they got here, this little artifact was super bright and glowing. And so they knew it kind of painted a target on their back, but they hadn't had any sort of confirmation of the Covenant just yet. But now, of course, they find out they're still here. They're basically patrolling this area. We got to get out of here for now. Back at base, we still see that Dorian is mad, and he's not even training with the militia now. He'll help them here and there, but he's pretty much just checked out. He doesn't want anything to do with this mission. He's tired of helping them. He's tired of being lied to. Victor and Saskia are like getting annoyed with him, saying like, dude, we get it. It sucks, but like we have a mission. And Evie's actually more sympathetic for Dorian. Like, she understands it. She's still gonna do her mission, but internally she is battling this whole thing. Like, all the lies, like, she's tired too. She doesn't want to be part of this anymore, but she's still willing to do the work. And in fact, she and Victor pretty much convince Owen to let her and Victor and another militia member known as Fari to go back to the hole and try and see if like they themselves are able to access it utilizing, you know, the first artifact found, the cylinder. Owen, again, a little more reluctant, but ultimately says like, all right, that's a good plan. Just stay safe. Don't go in there without me. Just try to see if you can access it. And so they do that. They head back to the location. It's nighttime now. The patrols are back out on their normal patrol, so no one's guarding the area. They have Fari, who's kind of in a building, acting as like a scout, basically protecting them with a sniper. And as they're looking at this force shield, like this artifact that Evie is holding is really pulling towards it. And eventually the closer they get, it like kind of lifts her off her feet a little bit, and she has to let it go. And when she does let it go, she discovers that it can penetrate the shield. And in fact, they can see down into the hole now. And so they're like, we can get down there, but we need to bring the rest of the group. Back at base, Saskia stayed behind to try and convince Dorian to come help them. You know, we have it to where Evie and Victor came back, informed everyone that like they can get down there now. We just need to go back with a bigger force. Saskia is now trying to appeal to Dorian, and Dorian's pretty much like, I'm not going to be an errand boy for Oni. I'm not going back down there. I'm done. And Saskia like kind of like starts talking to him, like telling him Owen's backstory. And she's like, I get that Oni sucks, but like, think about what they've done. Without Owen, we wouldn't be here. Without Owen, we would have never survived Brumisamer. So Owen's not a bad guy, but he is a soldier. He's just following orders. And this makes Dorian understand a little, but he's still adamant about not helping until Saskia appeals to the group. She's like, hey, don't do it for Owen. Don't do it for Oni. Do it for us, for me, for Victor, for Evie. And with that, Dorian like kind of like rolls his eyes, but he's like, all right, fine, but only because I'm doing it for you guys. And that's kind of pretty much stated too. Like at sunset, everyone begins to go back out there, and like, you know, Evie kind of thanks Dorian for coming, and he says, I'm only doing this for you. Again, kind of building that like there might be some sort of relationship developing between the two, but again, not fully explored. Maybe would have been explored in book 3. I don't know. As the entire militia force and, you know, local team are heading towards the drill site where the other artifact is, they're noticing a heavier Covenant presence. In fact, there's a Banshee flying over, but it doesn't even like notice them. And they're kind of like, what is going on? So they get back to this location, and like Dorian peeks his head out from one of the buildings to look down where that hole is. And what he finds is astonishing. There's a large Covenant force there and a Sanshayum prophet. It's never really stated who this prophet is. I don't know if it's like an actual one of like the main hierarchs or just a random like minor prophet. But overall, yes, a Sanshayum is here. So obviously with this heavy force, a new plan needs to be developed, and they develop it right here. The entire militia force is going to take up 3 different positions and act as snipers. While they start sniping and, you know, attention is brought elsewhere, local team plus Owen are going to sneak down into the hole utilizing the cylinder. This plan pretty much goes off without a hitch. Everyone gets in their spaces, and Owen directs each squadron, the 3 groups, one by one to slowly start their like attack. And as this is happening, the Covenant, of course, starts panicking. They, you know, extract the prophet and get him out of there. And then while they're attacking or fighting the snipers, local team starts rushing for the hole and utilizes the gravity that like the magnetism between the cylinder and whatever's in this hole. They use it to kind of like hold on to Evie as they're all pulled into the hole. For me, it's kind of a goofy moment. I'm like, okay, relax. But regardless of how you feel about it, it does get them down into this hole where now the entirety of the local team and Owen are down there. Inside this hole, they're now inside of like this weird Forerunner structure. They don't really know what it is. And it's just them. The Covenant still can't access it because the Covenant's the Covenant. There's no human. And down here, they find like this statue. This weird little statue that kind of looks like the cylinder could go there. So Evie puts the cylinder there, but it doesn't really react. So she starts manipulating it once again, and it starts to transform. It transforms into this octagonal shape, which allows it to fully click in with this statue. The moment this happens, the things start changing. Evie feels very sick and very weird, and so she kind of starts to look around, and the room is changing. And like everyone looks like it's almost like an illusion, but she can feel physically sick. And in fact, most of the kids start like throwing up. At some point, Evie's like up on the ceiling, hanging like a bat. Owen's the only one that seems to not be affected by whatever's going on. All he knows is that something is physically wrong right now. So he gets each one of the kids one by one and brings them out of this hole and out of, back out into like the main city. About 3 hours later, everyone survived. No one from any of the militia died. Owen was able to extract the kids. They all rested. They're all fine. They have some headaches. But for the most part, they seem normal. They are then called to basically debrief what happened with Oni. And in this room are the 3 kids, Owen, 4 kids. I don't know where I got 3 kids. But the 4 kids, Owen, and then Captain Delator and 3 Oni scientists are like there holographically. Each of the kids pretty much recount what they saw in their hallucinations until they come to the realization that it was a shared hallucination. Everything each person saw, they all saw together. And even we've learned that Owen found it or saw it too. The only difference is he didn't get physically ill by it. He did look at each one of the kids and could tell like it looked like they were being tortured, which is why he got them out of there. He's like, the room did change. Like I had to swim in the air to get some of you out of there. It's very weird, but no one can further explain it. Everyone in the room's trying to figure out exactly what happened. What is this room? No one really knows, but they come to the conclusion that whatever's weird about this room, it has the ability to change molecules. And that could be a real big problem if it can be weaponized. It could essentially just wipe out an existence of something by like changing its molecules. So once again, Oni's like, hey, here's what you have to do. Bring us the cylinder key, the now octagonal, key. Bring us the statue if you can. And also, hey, bring us a piece of the wall from this Forerunner room. It's kind of like, what? But no one's gonna argue, so hey, go ahead and do it. And then once again, we have it to where Oni's like, hey, but don't worry, 3 days, we have an extraction for you. And it's like, dog again, seriously, the 3 days, really. So then Owen once again updates the entire militia on what their plan is to get all these pieces and then get extracted. Fortunately, and unfortunately, their timetable gets moved up the next day. There's no longer a 3-day, extraction period. They were able to find an opening almost immediately and said like, you need to get in the city right now, get the device, get to the extraction point, and get out of there. So they developed this plan. There's gonna be 3 teams. Utilizing like fuel canisters and all this kind of stuff, they're gonna set a controlled fire. This controlled fire is gonna produce enough smoke to make it hard for everyone to see, more specifically the Covenant, banshees and all that kind of stuff. That's gonna be Firebug team. They're gonna be in control of the fire. Team 2 are going to be the corrallers. They're going to corral the Covenant in specific locations to keep them away from the hole. And third, but not least, always, local team who are going to sneak back in the hole, get these different pieces that Oni has asked for, and get out and get to the extraction point. Well, things go to shit relatively quickly. Kind of. The corrallers do their job and the Covenant starts to get a little bit, distracted by these forces that are attacking them. What goes to shit is the firebugs. They are setting off these controlled fires. Unfortunately, what no one took into account was this weird foam. And we discovered that there was probably a factory nearby that was destroyed that utilized this foam for stuffing, for like furniture and all that stuff. So when they didn't take it into account, that foam started catching fire. And they did not have enough fire suppressant to really, prevent it from growing out, from being able to create certain pathways. So this fire is now severely out of control. And this kind of makes it hard for local team to get in until Victor basically tells Saskia, or Saskia comes up with a plan to take one of the last fire suppressants they have, clear a path to the hole and to get down there. As she's getting ready to do this, Victor takes it and runs off saying he can do it, get the others and get down there. So then we switch over to Victor, who is laying down this fire suppressant, and internally we learned that he did this because for him, he only wanted to be a soldier. This is what he was expecting, to fight, to survive, to sacrifice himself for humanity, for his friends. That's why he did this. He believes Saskia is more important to Oni than he is, which is why he didn't let her do this. So while he's laying down this fire suppressant, clearing a path to the hole for his team, he starts choking on the smoke. Like again, this fire is severely strong. He is successfully able to create a path, but at the cost of choking on the smoke, and like he kind of like struggles around and then finally collapses and goes unconscious. With the rest of local team, again, Dorian, Evie, Saskia, and Owen now are able to make it to the hole. Not at first seeing Victor's body, so they assume he just finally escaped after suppressing the fire. They get down there, and for the most part, it's relatively easy. They use a laser to cut out a piece of the foreigner wall. They already have the key, and Owen and Dorian like kind of wrench the statue out of wherever it's like located. And I'm assuming it's not that heavy because at one point Dorian or Owen hands it to Dorian. But either way, the team gets all the pieces that they were told to get and get out of the hole. As they're getting out of the hole, Evie screams. And the reason why is because she has found Victor's body. So Owen hands Dorian the statue, picks up Victor, and together they make it to the extraction point. Days later, they're back at Tuolumne Base. They extracted. And Victor's still in the hospital. And in fact, no one's letting any of local team see him. Saskia has tried multiple times. She's blaming herself for where he's at. She believes that like she should have been the one in there, not Victor. So she's blaming herself. And then all three of them kind of meet up and start talking about like, it's weird. Like, why are they being so like, you can't see him, you can't see him. So they start to suspect something's going on. 2 days later, they're called in once again to a room where Owen, Captain Delator, and those 3 Oni scientists are there. And they update them that Victor's not looking good. But it's weird because his injuries are common. You know, 3rd-degree burns, smoke inhalation, like all things that can very easily be addressed with modern medical care, but his body's rejecting it all. So they took a blood sample from him. They took everyone's blood sample, Victor, Evie, Dorian, Saskia, and Owen, and they ran it through some tests, and they found in Victor's blood a weird anomaly that they cannot explain. It's almost like his blood's been like modified, or something about his genes have been modified. And they confirmed that Victor, Dorian, Saskia, and Evie have all confirmed to have this weird anomaly. And they suspect it's from either being, you know, exposed to the key, but more realistically, it's from whatever happened in that room when the molecules in the room were changing. Something about that room did something to them. And the worry here is that Victor, again, he has common injuries, but for some reason, his body's rejecting any medical care. Therefore, whatever this anomaly is, it could be a serious issue if something happens to the kids later on. Maybe they just get a random little cut, body rejects it, they can't heal. Maybe they get cancer and it's just completely worse. Who knows what it is? All they know is they have to address it. The kids learn here that Owen's blood was negative, and they assume it's because of his Spartan 3 augmentations. So with that, they tell the kids their plan. They reached out to Victor's parents, and they got permission to begin Spartan augmentations on Victor. And now they're offering it to these kids. Again, I know I call them kids. It's just easier to like group them in as that, but they're adults. They're at least 18. They can make their own decisions. It's heavily like stated many times, you're adults. You make your decisions. Right here, Captain Delator pretty much says like, we're offering you to become Spartans. We're already in early development of the next generation of Spartans who will, like the candidates, will be adults, not children like Owen. She doesn't say anything about Spartan 2s, but it's heavily implied that, you know, the Spartan 2s were also kids. But basically right here, we're getting like the early talks of the Spartan 4 program, and these kids are being offered to get augmentated. So that way, whatever this weird anomaly is can't actually affect them. Owen, like, doesn't really say anything. But Dorian, once again, is like kind of rejecting it. He doesn't trust Oni. He specifically doesn't think that they asked Victor's parents to modify or augment him. But Delator right here says, like, you're an adult, dude. It's time to grow up. You decide if you want to become a Spartan, become a Spartan. But like, I'm not going to force you. Do what you want. But like, you're an adult now. And to be honest, life outside of this life that you now have is never going to be the same. So like, it's time to either grow up and start putting others before yourself, or continue to be the way you are and get out of here. She doesn't specifically say all that, but it's heavily implied. The next day, the kids are still trying to determine if they should become Spartans. Obviously, they realize that if they say yes, that whole ideal of going back home and being normal kids is out of the picture, because there's a possibility whatever this anomaly is negatively impacts them. On the flip side, you're becoming a Spartan. Your life will never be the same. You're going to become a Spartan. You're going to be a soldier for life. It is what it is. It's not until they go and finally see Victor, who's kind of in like this like medical tube. He's not awake. He's still unconscious, but he looks terrible. The augmentations, they've done like the early procedures, nothing crazy, but enough to where like his body is starting to react positively. So it's working. Whatever these augmentations do is fighting this anomaly. And seeing this, Saskia is like, I don't want to die like this. And I'd rather be of service than be useless. So she says she's gonna do it. And Evie kind of looks to her and like agrees. And again, right here's where Dorian is important, because Dorian like looks to his team. He sees these people he's developed with, and he says once again, well, if you guys are gonna do something stupid, I might as well do it with you. And together they all hug in front of Victor's little medical pod, and the book ends there. So similar to Battleborn, there is an extra bit of content, I guess, that were added into the 2023 release. This is called Meridian Homecoming, and it starts off pretty much with this AI talking about the philosophy of home. And then it kind of starts to recount some of the stuff that's been going on in its own life, such as the created uprising, its place in this, its place with Meridian, because as it's called Meridian Homecoming, we discover that this AI is coming back home to Meridian. And this AI turns out to be none other than Governor Sloan, which we saw in Halo 5 Guardians, who was kind of like our lead throughout the entire Meridian missions, who we come to discover had pretty much been lying to Fireteam Osiris the entire time, and is in fact in league with Cortana and became like Cortana's right-hand man during the created uprising. Sloan then talks about like how things have changed now, because he went from governor of Meridian to high auxiliary in the created to basically nothing. He recounts that Cortana sacrificed herself. The domain was shut off from them. This promise of never dying is now gone. And he's starting to feel the effects of rampancy, of his matrixy starting to shut down. So he gets to Meridian, doesn't really say what he's on, but he gets to Meridian. He scans the planet and finds no one alive. He finds one Promethean knight that he's able to kind of like hack into and take control of. And he starts wandering Meridian. He goes to Meridian Station, talking about the first pioneers that came to Meridian stayed. Meridian Station was like the main station we see in Halo 5 Guardians. He then starts to walk the, I'm not gonna say it. Okay, I can't say it because it's a big word, but it's Shadow Light. If you've read Shadows of Reach, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's Shadow Light. All I know is that word is used 1 billion times in that book, and we will get to it. Anyways, he's walking the glass lens of Meridian, and he's talking about this philosophy of pretty much being like, he kind of sees that he messed up for Meridian, and he's kind of coming to the conclusion that he's okay with dying. But then he kind of changes. He's looking in the human essence that's within this knight, and he sees this girl that was once, you know, a young little girl grew up, joined the UNSC, fought in the war, retired to New Alexandria, and the last thing she remembers is getting composed by the Didact in Halo 4. And he's like, will I too just die and become a memory like this poor woman? Is that really all my life has to be? Is there no way for me to make amends? Is there no way for me to find, the answers and solutions to impossible problems? Is there no way for me to help once again and do right by the galaxy? And it ends there. It kind of feels like for a moment there, Governor Sloan was okay with dying. But then suddenly he wasn't. And for him, there was another mission to take a hold. But then it just ends there. Now, personally, I don't know. I will not lie to you. I know that technically in the Halo Infinite drops, with the whole, I can't remember what they're called, like the weird cyborg Spartans, that those are like technically created AIs taking control of Spartans, or at least robotic Spartans. I know Governor Sloan's pretty big in that. I'm pretty sure those were non-canon. They were just fun drops, but I don't know if there's a connection between this and that. All I know is it ends there. Governor Sloan might become another, either a problem or a solution in a later book, game, or whatever. All I know is it was fun. I think it was cool seeing Meridian post Halo 5, but I think I would love more extra content for this book specifically, because this is it. All right, so let's talk about the book. I liked this book. Overall, I think that Meridian Divide in its own is a good book. I didn't say this earlier, but the original cover says Halo Battleborn Meridian Divide. The re-release just says Halo Meridian Divide. I think it was just to simplify things. But what's sad is we're never gonna get that third book. And hopefully we get to see these characters in some capacity in a future book. But the problem is with most of the Halo books coming out, for example, Halo Parasite's Wake, that's going to take place during CE in 2552. Any other books we've been getting, such as Edge of Dawn, Epitaph, Rubicon Protocol, all take place around 2560. So remember, this is in 2548. If we get a book in 2552, these teens are now 22-year-olds. If we get a book about them in 2560, they're now 30-year-olds. What I mean by this is we're not going to get what immediately happens after this book. We're going to get something that's like years later. And I don't want that. I kind of want to see that development, that transition into becoming Spartans, because I totally forgot about this book. I don't remember 90% of what happened in this book. I don't remember anything. I did not remember this book for the life of me. I don't know if it's just because I didn't enjoy it as much, but I did like it a lot better this time around, and my mouth once again dropped when I saw that they were going to become Spartans. But we're never going to get a conclusion to that. Maybe. Once again, like, Saskia is my favorite character in this book, but I feel like the growth of this book is minimal. Dorian's still angry, and he maintains that anger throughout the book to the point where even I get annoyed with him, that I'm like, I get it. Oni sucks. Oni truly, very truly sucks. But you're kind of just pulling your team down, brother. You need to help them out. And of course that happens in the end, but it's for such a quick moment that it's not really rewarding when it happens. And like, it just feels like every character was stagnant. There was no growth development. We still have no idea what's going on with Saskia. Evie's kind of just in limbo of, do I trust Oni? Do I not trust Oni? Do I trust Oni? Do I not trust Oni? Victor's really the only one that's like knows what he wants, and that's to become a soldier. Which is why at the end of the day, he's probably going to be thrilled when he wakes up and discovers he's a Spartan of all things. But what I'm trying to say here is that the plot's fine. I don't like the back and forth. I don't like the, let's go look at it. Okay, let's go back to base. Okay, we got to go back out there. Okay, let's go back to base. We're under attack. That happens twice. You know, it happens in Bruma Samir with the first artifact, and it happens in Annecy with the second artifact. It felt kind of stagnant. It felt like Silent Storm, where it's just kind of like the same mission over and over again, where it's kind of like, all right, guys, let's think of something differently, please. I think at the end of the day, Meridian Divide just feels like an in-between book with whatever the third book was going to be, and that's a real shame. I do think that had Battleborn Part 3 came out, this book would have been much better. I think it would have complemented 3 super well, that it would have flowed well. Like, I would have never been mad to read Meridian Divide. It would have felt like, okay, gotta read Battleborn. Meridian Divide's that nice little bridge, gives you some extra content, but doesn't do anything dramatic. And then 3 is the main conclusion. But since we didn't get that, this book just felt like an abrupt stop. An abrupt stop with no development, and it's definitely, It's not really the fault of Cassandra Rose Clark. Again, I think the book is fun. I think it's good. I just think that without that third book, it feels incomplete, and it severely hurts this book because it's kind of like, wow, that was great. What's next? Nothing? Cool. So here's what I'm going to say. Should you read Meridian Divide? Only for two reasons. One, you want to read the Battleborn series. Again, it's a YA genre book. It's going to read like that. If you're for more of that like nitty gritty Halo, this is not the book for you. It has some good parts for that nitty gritty, but 90% of it's very like safe and just kind of like vague, if that makes sense. The other reason is if you're okay not having closure, because as of right now, there's nothing for these books. There's no end. These characters are still in limbo. Did they finally become Spartans? What's it like being a Spartan? What's that development? What's it like being on the same playing field as Owen? In my last video, a subscriber, or maybe not a subscriber, but someone commented on my video, known as Zeta4053, shout out for you for commenting, pretty much said that like he kind of thinks, or he or she, I don't know. They believe that these books kind of failed because they came out in this limbo period. Like, let's be real. 2019 was a weird limbo period for Halo. Yeah, we got Discover Hope in that same year. We got the teaser for Infinite the year before, but like Halo wasn't really doing anything yet. Maybe, and unfortunately, had these books released during the whole Fortnite craze when Master Chief was brought into Fortnite, they would have done better. But ultimately, I think like since Halo just wasn't making big moves in 2019, these books just, there was no audience. No teen, young adult was really looking for anything Halo at the time. I've recommended these books to people who have kids and like Halo, but at the end of the day, it just, I think it fell under the radar, and that's what severely hurt these books. But with that, yes, I think you should read it, but don't expect too much out of them. Expect a fun ride. Expect a good story, mostly from Battleborn, and a good little bridge from Meridian Divide. That is the end of the bridge. There's nothing in the bridge, unfortunately. So what should you read, watch, play, and or do to prepare for Halo Meridian Divide? Read Battleborn. Realistically, that is it. Battleborn is the only book you're gonna need to read to really understand Meridian Divide. Similar to Battleborn, these books were made to just kind of be their own thing. There's nothing in Meridian Divide that dramatically changes. That like, you're like, oh, if you would have read Silent Storm, you would have gotten this. Like, no. Battleborn's all you need to read to understand Meridian Divide. But that is pretty much it for today's video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in Halo: The Fall of Reach.